Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us on this amazing spring day. I hope you're going to be able to get out and enjoy it, take a walk, go for a bike ride. Beautiful. This is, of course, the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Lower Bucks Sunday service. And as always, for your best viewing experience, I would recommend putting it into speaker view. So welcome. Welcome to this congregation where for over half a century now, we've been seeking to foster community, to grow our spirits, to serve others, and to work for justice. We're very glad that you have joined us this morning in our sacred cyberspace and hope that here you will experience love, acceptance, and inspiration. After our service, please feel welcome to stick around for fellowship and conversation. Our monthly Touchstone themes strive to help us shape our days and guide our journey. Our April topic is mindfulness. Mindfulness is the quality and practice that overcomes our fragmentation so that we can experience wholeness. Mindfulness is the call to pay attention. M. Scott Peck said that the principal form of love is attention. Being mindful is paying attention to ourselves, others, and the world. Mindfulness requires skill, but its practice is transformative of ourself and our relationships. Our sermon today is from Mark Bernstein, who is certainly no stranger to us. We have been graced with his presence many times over the years, and he is one of our absolute favorite guest speakers. Mark is an adjunct staff member of the Central East region of the UUA and also serves on the steering committee of the Accessibility and Inclusion Ministry, a joint program of the UUA and Equal Access, working to enable the full engagement of people with disabilities and their families in our congregations. Mark's home congregation is the UU Church of Delaware County in Media, where he has been a member for 27 years. The title of his sermon today is Paying Attention. Our busy and often chaotic lives require that we pay attention to many things, often at once. In so doing, we find ourselves pulled in different directions, confused, exhausted, and often overwhelmed. How do we know where to direct our attention? And how can our Unitarian Universalist faith help us to pay attention to that which is most important to us? These are the questions that we'll be discussing today. Now, let us enter into worship together. For our prelude this morning, our musician extraordinaire, Avi Wisnia, has chosen a beautiful hymn titled, We Would Be One.
We would be one, as now we join in singing our hymn of love, to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what is in us true. We would be one in living for each other, to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow, a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service. With love and justice strive to make us free.
Thank you, Avi. What a beautiful message. Please feel free to join me as I read our chalice lighting words. May this simple flame touch the dry twigs that guard our hearts, allowing the power of light to penetrate our self-protection and show us the amazing potential for heat and light that resides within us. Our opening words this morning are from Elena Westbrook. In a world ravaged by violence, by hatred, by conflicts that seem eternal and insoluble, sometimes the only thing we can do is be still for a moment to remind ourselves what is real. The sun that rose this morning, the dirt under our feet, the air whispering in and out of our lungs. This hour, try just to be present in each moment as it unfolds. Your simple attention is what makes these moments holy. Our amazing Director of Religious Exploration, Angela Connon, now has her message for all ages.
Good morning, everybody. Today in service, the topic is paying attention. And I was thinking about that topic, and then I was thinking the Earth Day is coming up too. And I thought of a story about Rachel Carson, who was a naturalist and a scientist and an artist, and she inspired the environmental movement that eventually became Earth Day. And so I thought this would be a great story for today. There was definitely a lot of paying attention that Rachel had to do that you'll see in the story, especially in her early life. Now, the story has a lot of bird chirping. And so you're going to hear some chirping birds for a little bit during the story. I'll turn it off after a few minutes. All right, so here we go with Spring After Spring. It was dawn when the chorus began. Rachel didn't want to miss a note. There she is right in the middle saying, hello. As the midday sun warmed the earth, the other musicians chimed in. And wonders big and small. Spring was Rachel's favorite time of year. As the sun set, she could hear the first bubbles of frog song. Crickets began their nighttime tune, and bats squeaked a lullaby. At home, there was a warm supper and a big family. Mom played the piano, and Dad sang songs and read stories. Rachel's favorites were those about the sea. As the days grew longer and warmer, the chattering, chirping, and hooting got louder. In just a sec, I'm going to turn the birds off now. There we go. Until the gathering calls from the migrating birds meant that it was autumn. They were coming together for their long journey through the ocean of air to their wintering homes. But not everyone left. Snuggled under a warm blanket, Rachel drew pictures and wrote about the life she experienced all year. She read books about animals and imagined what their lives were like. Spring after spring, year after year, the birds arrived. Every season, Rachel watched, listened, and wrote. And like the nestlings, she grew quickly. Then one morning, it was time for her to go off to college. Then one autumn, she was sure she wanted to be a writer until she looked through a microscope and saw a small world in a drop of water, tiny sea plants and animals. Rachel was amazed and in love. She wanted to know more about the very small world made visible by a microscope. She had never been to the ocean and was scared to go in the water. To learn about the creatures in tidal pools, marshes, and the sea, Rachel decided that she would study biology. She put her writing aside. After she finished school, Rachel worked as a scientist and compiled information about the ocean. Now for her job, she wanted to know what it was like to actually be underwater. She was still scared, but she went anyway. In the fish world, many things are told by sound waves. Rachel began to write books about the sea. They were so full of scientific detail and vivid descriptions of the lives of sea creatures that people could imagine those worlds. Rachel became a famous author. But there was something wrong. All around, nature's voices were going quiet. So Rachel did what she did best. She watched closely, listened carefully, and learned as much as she could about what was happening. Rachel put together scattered facts and found the answer. People wanted to kill bugs that ate their plants, bothered them, and sometimes even made them sick. Chemists created new poisons to solve the insect problems that seemed to work and seemed to be harmless to other creatures and humans. These poisonous chemicals were quickly used everywhere in huge amounts because people thought they were safe. But Rachel found evidence that the poisons were not safe. Rachel wrote a book to tell people what she learned. Silent Spring created a huge ruckus. Some people were inspired to change, but many didn't believe Rachel. These people over here on the left are saying, why are they putting them everywhere? Are they the only answer? Are you sure they're safe? Do we have to use so much about those poisons? And then this group of people is saying, they're safe, trust us. They are modern chemicals for a modern world, and they are the answer to our problems. Eventually, President Kennedy took notice and began an investigation to find out what was true. Rachel was asked to come to Washington, D.C. and defend her book. She was scared, but she went. Rachel's testimony in Washington and her writing in Silent Spring made people see that they have an effect on the environment and the other creatures that they share the world with. People were inspired to speak up. Congress passed new laws so that nature was treated with more care, and some of the most harmful chemicals were banned. Spring after spring, year after year, people celebrated the earth and the environment because Rachel showed them how beautiful and precious it is. And the bird songs came back. But Rachel went home and continued watching and listening. In the morning, she went out among the tide pools and gathered specimens. In the afternoon, she carefully studied them and took notes on her observations. And in the evening, when the tide had gone out again, she returned each creature with great care, exactly in the spot she had found it, exactly where it belonged. In nature, nothing exists alone. So I hope you liked our story, bird songs and all, and I hope you have a lovely week. Happy Earth Day.
Thank you, Angela, for that amazing story. I can remember reading Silent Spring when I was in high school and the huge impact it had on me and indeed the whole world. And now, of course, Roundup is the new DDT that is slowly killing us. So hopefully that will get banned as well. For our interlude this morning, Avi has chosen a little bit of everything.
With his back against the San Francisco traffic, on the bridge's side that faces towards the jail, setting out to join a certain demographic, he hoists his first leg up over the rail. A phone call's made, police cars show up quickly. The sergeant slams his passenger door. He says, "Hey son, why don't you talk through all this with me? Just tell me what you're doing it for." Oh, it's a little bit of everything. It's the mountains, it's the fog, it's the news at 6 o'clock, it's the death of my first dog, it's the angels up above me, it's the songs that they don't sing, it's a little bit of everything. There's an older man who stands in his buffet line. He is smiling and he's holding out his plate. And the further he looks back into his timeline, that hard road always led him to today. Making up for when his bright future had left him. Making up for the fact his only son is gone. And letting out everything at once his server asks him, "Have you figured out yet what it is you want?" I want a little bit of everything, the biscuits and the beans, whatever helps me to forget about the things that brought me to my knees. So pile on the mashed potatoes and an extra chicken wing. I'll have a little bit of everything. Somewhere a girl is writing invitations to a wedding she has scheduled for the fall. Her man says, "Baby, can I make an observation? You don't seem to be having any fun at all." She said, "You just worry about your shirt size and your shoes. And rest assured that this is making me feel good. I think that love is so much easier than we realize. If you can give yourself to someone, then you should. 'Cause it's a little bit of everything. The way you joke, the way you ache. It is getting up before you so I could watch you as you wake. So on that day in late September. It's not some stupid little ring. I'll get a little bit of everything. It's a little bit of everything. It's the matador and the bull. It's the suggested daily dosage. It's the red moon when it's full. So all these psychics and these doctors, they're all right and they're all wrong. It's like trying to make out every word when they should simply hum along. It's not some message written in the dark or some truth that no one sees. It's a little bit of everything. It's a little bit of everything.
Thank you, Avi. What an amazing song. If we could experience mindfulness in everything that's going on around us, that would be quite a game changer. And now it is my extreme pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for his reading, Mr. Mark Bernstein.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be back with you again. I'm beginning to feel like it's not a Sunday unless I'm with all of you. The morning reading is courtesy of the Unitarian Universalist minister, Reverend Danielle DeBona. She writes, I have a Unitarian Universalist theology of hope, and it is based on my belief that being present in this very moment is the way to peace. What I know for sure is that we are only promised the moment we are in, and that is enough. It is enough if we fully embrace it without distraction. So ends the morning reading.
Thank you, Mark. Truly, if we can just be present in the moment, that's also a game changer. For our offertory this morning, the split plate recipient for the month of April is NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. It is the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization dedicated to building better lives for the millions of Americans affected by mental illness. NAMI Mercer provides free, top-rated mental health programs and services for our community. A robust local affiliate of NAMI, NAMI Mercer listens, leads, educates, and advocates, empowering families and individuals affected by mental illness to build lives of quality and respect, free of stigma and discrimination. They help thousands of families and individuals every year. So please be generous. Of course, you can find a link to contribute on our weekly e-newsletter and our website as well. And now Mark will give his sermon, Paying Attention.
Thank you, Gil. So, why bother? I mean, really, why bother? Why should I even attempt to share my spiritual message with you when statistically, most of you will only remember about 17 to 25% of what you hear? Even immediately after I'm done this morning, you'll only recall about 50% of what I said. And men will probably recall less than women since they tend to use only half their brains when listening, whereas women engage all four lobes. I'll let you fill in your own punchline. Over the next 20 minutes or so, most of you won't even focus all of your attention on what I'm saying. A 2010 Harvard study determined that people engage in mind wandering, that is, not paying attention or being fully engaged with what is right in front of them. Mind wandering a whopping 47% of the time. So why bother? Why bother? Well, let me tell you why. Because paying attention to what is around us and what is going on inside of us enables us to become fully immersed in a world that is connected to other human beings, to live out our Unitarian Universalist principles, to be happier and healthier, to fully experience life in all its joys and all its sorrows. The beloved poet Mary Oliver wrote, "Instructions for living a life. Pay attention, be astonished, tell about it." If Mary says it, it must be so. But paying attention in this world of ours is not easy, since there is so much competing for our attention. Our busy schedules, social media, cell phones, text messages, email messages, alerts, informing us of another mass shooting or another miscarriage of justice. A recent study found that on average, each single minute in this country results in 204 million emails, 16 million text messages, and 350,000 new tweets. That's each minute. The average smartphone user unlocks their phone in response to a notification between 80 and 110 times a day. Theologian Barbara Brown Taylor wrote, "The practice of paying attention really does take time. Most of us move so quickly that our surroundings become no more than the blurred scenery we fly past on our way to somewhere else. We pay attention to the speedometer, the wristwatch, the cell phone, the list of things to do, all of which feed our illusion that life is manageable. Meanwhile," she continues, "none of them meets the first criterion for reverence, which is to remind us that we are not gods. If anything, these devices sustain the illusion that we might yet be gods if only we could find some way to do more faster." Paying attention then, being present in the moment, as Reverend DeBona tells us in the opening reading, serves to keep us grounded. It compels us to slow down, to stop and reflect, to see things more clearly and in greater focus, to see things as they really are, unclouded by preconceived ideas, assumptions, or biases. In her essay called "We Are Called to Pay Attention," singer, songwriter, and author Amanda Udis Kessler calls on us to pay attention to the people in our lives, to our individual lives, to the society in which we live, and to the natural world around us. Her essay will serve as kind of an outline for what I want to share with you this morning. She writes, "We are called to pay attention to the people in our lives, to celebrate their joys with them and to tend to them in their struggles. We are called to bring our compassion, kindness, and patience to our relationships, even as we are grateful for the compassion, kindness, and patience others show to us. Paying attention to the people in our lives is a necessary prerequisite for living our first principle, respecting the inherent worth and dignity of all people. Paying attention enables us to be genuine with other human beings, to better understand them and to better appreciate them. Paying attention is the gift that we give to others. Sociologist, clinical psychologist, and MIT professor Sherry Turkle found that relationships depend on what she called authentic conversation. Authentic conversation. And that authentic conversation requires us to give our undivided attention to others. So if you are at home talking with your significant other and you take out your smartphone to check your email messages, you are not paying attention. You are not having authentic conversation. If you're in a conversation with another person and you are constantly interrupting or otherwise not letting them finish their thought, you are not paying attention. You are not having authentic conversation. Paying attention requires us to stay in the moment with others. It is an active, not a passive process. And often we need to intentionally call ourselves back to paying attention when our minds wander. Now, of course, if we're thinking about our minds wandering and the need to pay attention, our mind is wandering and we're not paying attention. You see, this paying attention stuff in conversation is not easy. Eudes Kessler calls us to pay attention to our individual lives, to our delights and pains. We are called to understand ourselves, to take good care of ourselves, to know ourselves. Know thyself, Aristotle said. Pay attention to what is going on inside you. Of course, we all need to pay attention to our physical selves. Heaven knows I do. How we're feeling, what we're putting into our bodies, how often we're moving our bodies and in what direction. But we also need to pay attention to what is going on cognitively and psychologically to understand our emotions and reactions to situations with which we are confronted. In other words, we need to get to know our brain. That's right, our brain. So sit back, boys and girls, and soak in some neuropsychology knowledge. This will test your ability to pay attention. We're talking about the limbic system, a region of the brain where our emotions reside. It's also referred to as the emotional brain. Within the limbic system are what are called amygdalae, two small almond-shaped structures, one located on each side of the brain. The right hemisphere amygdala is responsible for processing negative emotions, such as anger and fear. When the right amygdala is activated by an upsetting or a traumatic event, or when we feel threatened by an outside source, we experience these negative emotions due to the amygdala being activated. Stay with me here. Meanwhile, on the other side of the brain, more specifically in the front of the brain, lies our prefrontal cortex. This is the part of the brain responsible for rational thinking, planning, and reasoning. When we become angry or fearful in response to an upsetting or a threatening situation, the prefrontal cortex kicks in as a check on the rise in emotions caused by the activation of the right amygdala. The prefrontal cortex tells us to calm down, to look at the situation rationally, to consider the consequences of any actions that you might take. When we engage in self-talk, or even talking to ourselves out loud, or when we talk with others, we are activating the prefrontal cortex. Paying attention to what is going on in our brain then enables us to better get in touch with our feelings, to understand why we are feeling the way we are, and to decide on an appropriate course of action under the circumstances. End of lecture. And by the way, this will be on the quiz. UD Kessler also calls us to pay attention to the society in which we live. She writes, "We are called to understand the ways in which the lives of people we don't know and never will know are made harder by political and economic policies that value some kinds of people over other kinds of people. In paying attention to our society, we give thanks for the many people who are working for justice for everyone. We live in a chaotic, frequently violent, and extremely unjust world right now. As painful as it sometimes is, we can't turn away from it. As citizens, as Unitarian Universalists, we have an obligation to attend to the issues that affect others, particularly those who are disadvantaged in our society or who are on the margins. I have heard friends and colleagues express their fatigue with following all the negative events in the world, particularly during the Trump years, announcing a boycott of watching the news. I'm taking a break, they tell me. I can't take it anymore. Understandable. But we who hold the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all as one of our principles do not have the luxury of turning off or blocking out the evils in our society. We must continue to pay attention, to call them out, and to advocate for a better life for everyone. As an example, and in referring to those who would be white allies, the Reverend Don Cooley writes, "Pay attention and then go educate yourselves on how systemic racism and white supremacy culture are alive in the United States today, so that we might be a part of the solution." In the chat this morning, I placed a link to a anti-racism training being sponsored by the Central East region of the UUA. It's from Friday, April 30th until Sunday, May 2nd. It is a major commitment of time, but it should be well worth it. If you're available, check out the link, register, and join me. And finally, UD Kessler calls us to pay attention to the natural world around us. We are called to understand how our decisions help the natural world to flourish or cause it harm. In paying attention to the natural world, we commit to living sustainably so that all beings have the chance to live, and so that many generations after our own can celebrate the planet and its gifts. The author Hazrat Inyat Khan wrote, "When we pay attention to nature's music, we find that everything on the earth contributes to its harmony." And Lawrence Kushner, a contemporary Reform rabbi and scholar of Jewish mysticism, offers this: "There is another world hidden right here within this one whenever we pay attention." Let me read that again. "There is another world hidden right here within this one whenever we pay attention." As modern urbanites, he writes, we are able to go through our daily lives mostly unconscious of the natural world. Yet over the last 50 years, the environmental movement has taught us that the future of this planet largely depends on our ability to pay attention to this hidden world. If we hope to become responsible stewards of this planet for future generations, we must begin by opening our eyes and hearts. We must begin by paying attention. Let me conclude with a quote from the Old Testament, specifically Exodus chapter 3, verse 4. Referring to the miracle of the burning bush, it is written, "And God appeared to Moses because he had turned aside to look." Because he had turned aside to look. Moses could have walked past the burning bush without a second thought, but by turning to look, by paying attention, he was given the opportunity to bring a message of liberation and hope to the people waiting below. We too become liberated whenever we pay attention. We become free to experience the joy and the wonder of uncovering that other world, as Lawrence Kushner put it, that other world hidden right here within this one. Thank you for listening, my friends.
Thank you, Mark. What a powerful message. I just wish I could remember more than half of it. Yes. Now is the time in our service where we recognize and lift up one another in love. Let us be fully present and listen with open hearts. If you wish to share a joy or a sorrow at this time, click on Participants and then click Raise Hand, and we will help you to unmute. For everyone's benefit, please be brief.
Well, Gil, I have a joy. I spoke last week of a friend of mine at work who had brain surgery about 10 days ago, and for a tumor that was not malignant, thankfully, but he is doing so well. He participated in a couple of Zoom calls with me this week, which was awesome. Probably shouldn't have been doing that though.
Thank you for sharing.
Will and Mary Jane. Okay. Bill and Mary Jane.
Bill and Mary Jane, yes, go ahead and unmute.
I'm unmuted. Not yellow around though. Anyway, I had a shock. I mean, it shouldn't be a shock, but I have a grandchild who's sweet and lovely, and I love her so much. And she had a birthday this Wednesday, and I was so shocked because she's 14, but I still think she's a baby. So kids get older. I know.
And you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
Well, you don't look a day over 29.
I do.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
Gil, this is Karen. I have a couple of information concerns to share. As you guys know, several years back, my brother had a severe kind of health crisis that was triggered by a joint replacement. And just this past week, his wife went through the same procedure. So our anxiety's been on high alert, but so far so good with her recovery. And then a niece I told you about in prior years had gone through a lymphoma diagnosis and come out the other side cancer-free, but now she's categorized as having an immunodeficiency disorder that requires her to get immunoglobulins replacing, to try to bolster her immune system. So healing prayers for both of those family members. Thank you so much.
We will keep them in our thoughts and our prayers.
I don't see anyone else.
If no one else would like to share, then we will move on. So whether or not you shared today, for your joys, we in this community join you in celebration. For any sorrows or concerns, may you feel our sympathy and our compassion. Let's pause for just a moment of gratitude, silent meditation, and prayer. For our closing song, Avi has chosen a Pete Seeger song.
We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. We are on the road to freedom. We shall not be moved. On the road to freedom, we shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. We are young and old together. We shall not be moved. Young and old together. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. We are singing all together. We shall not be moved. Singing all together. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved.
Thank you, Avi. That was quite inspirational. Please feel free to join me as I read our closing words. May all beings be well and happy. May no harm fall on anybody. May we look only at the good of others. May nobody suffer because of my actions. Our service is now concluded. Please feel welcome to stay for our very informal coffee hour. And you can unmute yourself now and you can chat. And if you want to see